we have a special guest. You've gotten the details in the mails I sent. I'm going to quickly just also read from what we share with everybody. The guest we have, his name is, I should have asked you before the session start the pronunciation very well, but I'll try. His name is Sudhi Ramamurthy. He's the program manager and office and at the Office platform team, and works directly with Microsoft, works out of the Microsoft HQ office in Washington, Redmond. And in the details we have sent to everybody, I think he's active socially, so he has shared with us ahead his Twitter handle, which I've shared with everybody who is on the meetup. In case if you've not received, you can check your email, you will see, or if you go to the page I shared with us, you will see all about the links of how you can connect with him on Twitter and on GitHub. So without taking any much more time, I'm going to just call him up stage. And the topic he has for us is on Office Script, which is something I'm sure people will be happy to learn about. Some people do not even know it exists. So this will be a very high opening session. So the topic is integrate Excel with the rest of your business and apps using Office Script. So Sudhi, thanks a lot, and the stage is yours. I'll turn off my own video. I'll be in the background, muting background noises and coordinating things.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. So let me start by just sharing the presentation. And in case you're having trouble viewing this, I also sent a link that I hopefully will work. I usually don't create link with outside the organization access. So if it doesn't work, just leave a message and I'll find other ways to provide the material to you. So let me share. Are you all able to see?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. So this is an awesome opportunity for me to come and present. I was just telling Michael earlier that I love the fact that this is on a Sunday. You know, I can have my morning cup of coffee and be relaxed and not worry about, or have another meeting to go right after this session. So I'm happy to stick around, answer any questions you may have at the end. So once again, thanks for the opportunity. So the topic of today's presentation is going to be increasing productivity with modern Excel extensibility. The core focus is going to be on one of the product, Office Scripts, but I thought I could take this opportunity to go a little bit, step back a bit and then talk about the two other variants we have in terms of the solutions for people developing solutions for modern Excel. But my deep dive is going to be on Office Scripts. So as Michael mentioned, so I'm a program manager in the Office platform team. So the core focuses of our team is to help customers build and extend on top of Excel. And I've been with Microsoft for about over 6 years now, or maybe approaching 6 years. And I've been with the same team. I really love it because one, I not only get to work on some advanced and cutting edge product, but at the same time, we are very much a customer focused team. So developers are our customers. We also have some internal developers who use and build based on the same technology. So it's almost like, we are a smaller company within the company. So so it's been great working for this role. And I'm also quite eager and active to reach out on the social community. I have a GitHub profile here, and I'll point out to one of the projects that I maintain towards the end. On Twitter, find me on LinkedIn, please connect me. And I also have a channel on YouTube where I, whenever I get a chance, I publish some videos. That's been a recent endeavor on my part. I find it really useful to connect with the community using that channel as well. So feel free to reach out to me. I look forward to your invitations. All right, so let's move on to the agenda today. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be touching kind of on the broader Excel extensibility landscape, and then dive into the add-ins and REST API introduction. So it's an introduction. These deserve their own, probably another hour on their own. I'm happy to follow up for another meeting or bring in somebody else who are experts in those areas. And then finally, I'll go kind of deeper into Office scripts. Right? So in terms of Q&A, I'm not able to see the question streams that may be coming through. So what I'll do is at the end of the add-ins and REST API section, I'll stop and then take any questions. And then I'll again, the Office scripts part, I'll stop at a couple of locations. So you'll get plenty of opportunity. And at the end, I can also stay back to take any more questions. Right? So with that, I'll get started with the actual topic. And so I think, so when you think of, when we say, modern Excel platform, so I would say the journey started about sort of 10 years. So we've had a very thriving VBA and COM-based Excel automation. So all that is going to be continued to support. Those will continue to address many of the customer challenges. But we were, noticing some unique market shifts, and that resulted in providing alternate solutions for Excel developers. And those are sort of large amount of data, and we needed sort of better ways to get insights into the data. And that also meant that there are other apps that are really well versed in handling large amount of data and making sense out of it, like Power BI. So we need like Excel to be able to connect with that easily across platforms. And then there is sort of increasing time demands as well as the collaboration demand, especially in the last year or so. So you could imagine that we have environments that are kind of shifting from more of an individual focus to more team and collaboration focused. And any solutions that you may have been fine with using on an individual or desktop-based setup now needs to be more collaborative in nature. And then there are also sort of growing security and protection aspects, and administrators seeking better control over, hey, what sort of automation is our customer base using? So these challenges sort of led Excel to offer one of the three technologies that I'm talking about today, and that is sort of the modern Office add-ins. When we think of our add-ins, these are traditionally being distributed at a file level, and if you have a large organization, so you need some sort of a special means to deploy and distribute. So modern Office add-ins solved a bunch of issues. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the key aspects here. One is that once you install it, it stays with you. So it's not attached to the Excel file or your given Excel version. It is attached to your account. So any add-in you acquire, you may be creating them and distributing, or you may be the user using it. These stay with you. And next is cross-platform, and which means that it'll run on Mac, Windows, and online, and also on iPad. And it is not just Excel, it also covers Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and Outlook. And Outlook happens to also work on the mobile. So if we have users who work across devices or across different operating systems, this solution will travel with them, and it'll work wherever they're operating on. And it stays up to date, which means that it's as soon as you, let's say you add a new functionality, all your users get it immediately. So you don't need to do anything in terms of pushing the updates. And I'll tell you why that is the case in a second. And it's very easy to acquire. So we have two forms that I'm showing on the right side. So you can get it right from within your Office application. So under Insert, there is a Get Add-in, which you may have noticed, and that opens up a small dialog. You can search, and there are different categories to search from, and you can acquire. And once you add it, it's there for you. Wherever you travel, it'll travel with you. And then the same functionality is also available for the administrator. So administrator can say, hey, I don't want any of my employee to do this, but I'm going to handpick and assign. So under the Office 365 administrator setup, they also get the exact same view, and they can provide a experience to add a given add-ins. They can pick and choose and assign to employees. They can pick groups or individuals or to the entire organization, and you just get it directly. And then that we can also go through the store experience, which same thing, same experience, but you don't have to be in client. It'll automatically assign to your account, and then it'll launch Excel with that add-in launched. So there are sort of 3 different ways to acquire the add-in. And then because of the architecture, it is more secure. So what we mean by this is, when we say add-in, they're essentially a web application. So think of you writing a simple web page that takes in some form information, let's say your name, and it says, adds a greeting and displays back, right? So that's a very simple add-in. That's because that same web page that you've written can be hosted wherever you host your application, a web application. And all this add-in requires is just a manifest file. And that gets used by Office application, in this case, say Excel, during the installation. And it simply points to, hey, here's where my add-in is, and which is a web add-in. And what we do in Excel is we create a container, and then it's basically like an iframe, so sandbox container, and the web application runs within that container, right? So it's like a browser within Excel launching this web application and then pointing to this location. It just adds. It just launches within Excel, right? So because of this model, it's very easy to make changes, right? So as soon as you push a change to your web add-in, to your website, everybody, all the users get it instantly, because it's not, you don't have to push anything to the client. So that's sort of the high-level overview of the add-ins and the different features. And in terms of the components that comes with add-ins, so you can use all or some of these. So one is the ribbon command. So here I've highlighted an add-in called Script Lab. And so that add-in has chosen to include these ribbon commands here. So there are a few other advanced ones with Excel. You can have like a drop-down button. You can group commands into sections. And yeah, so there are other things. This is a simple command, but there are other more advanced options available. And then there's a task pane, so this is the big one. So this is where the user experience, the user interaction happens. And we provide an library called Office.js. And Office.js uses that library to interact with Excel. And that is sort of the key to bridge your user experience with Excel data. So there is an option. Either you can choose the task pane, or you can also go with the content add-in. So this is, think of it as like a dialog that gets pinned to a given location. This is the same web page, but just it is in the center as opposed to in the on the side, on the task pane side, and it offers very like limited set of capability in terms of the user experience, because all you have is just like a simple dialog view, but it may suit some of your experience options. Like in this case, this add-in displays a map based on the content of data that's here. So for this, users may need to zoom in, zoom out, and things like that. So for that, they've chosen the content add-in. So task pane or content add-in, that's so the two experience you can choose. And regardless, you can have a web dialog, like if you want an authorization, or you want to launch like another form and display a wider dialog, you can do that. And then finally, the custom functions. So these are like user-defined functions using the JavaScript technology, and I'll speak to that in a second. And you can package all of these along with the add-ins, so you don't need to distribute separate solutions. So all of these can be part of your same solution. And then, so digging deeper into the custom functions, so this enables developers to add new functionality, new functions within Excel by defining them in JavaScript. So this can all be part of the add-ins itself. And users can access these custom functions just like any other function. Like, so here, you can see the user typing a function, it shows up. There's like a namespace attached at the front that distinguishes your function from the other. And then the piece of code is pretty simple. So here I have a function called sphere volume that takes in a parameter, returns the parameter. Whatever you return goes back to the range value, right? And onto the same add-in, it's very easy to get started. All you need is a JavaScript file or a TypeScript file, functions file, and the same manifest. So this is very simple to get started out with. So that's the add-in. So add-in is for in-app usage. So if you have a user and you want to provide them with an extension when they are operating within the application, Office add-ins is the right technology to use. And you can use the user experience interaction based on the task pane or the content add-in. Or you can also provide custom functions. So even if you don't have any user experience, you can still provide custom function. It is not necessary that you need to have like a task pane to go with it. So, and in all of these, you can provide like auth functionality. We provide single sign-on so that you will know which user you're working with as soon as your add-in launches. So all those benefits comes with the whole platform, usage of the platform. So before I stop for questions, I'm going to talk about one more topic. Oh yeah, so this is getting started. I've given a link to the main web page. The other thing you could use is sort of the add-in playground you get in the form of ScriptLab add-in. So you can just get it within Excel, and you'll get like the inbuilt code editor, and then you can run your code directly. So this is a very easy way to get started out with. So feel free to open up my PowerPoint and go to this slide and access these links. Right. So the other kind of pillar of Excel extensibility is the REST API. So you may be familiar with REST protocol. It is a way for two systems to interact with each other using the HTTP protocol. And it is part of Microsoft Graph. So if you are familiar with Microsoft Graph, so this is a big, huge service, programmability surface for Microsoft services. All of the M365 and some of the Azure services are available within this umbrella. So you can access things like Outlook emails, Teams, tasks, SharePoint, Excel. There's some identity APIs. So there's a whole ton. And the place where it gets used is web or mobile applications trying to access the M365 content. So they use Microsoft Graph because it gives them a very easy to use way of by the means of these REST APIs. And it also offers the sign-in capability. So that way users visit your web page, let's say, or a mobile app, you can have them sign in using the OAuth protocol, which is basically saying, hey, that user is giving you, the application developer, access to do certain operations on user's behalf, right? So that happens periodically, but beyond that initial sign-in, you can write a web application that can go access all this content. So let's say you're writing a new mobile app that can easily create meeting schedules, right? So that could be a scenario. And you can use Graph to be able to do these type of interactions on your tablet, mobile phone, or on just a regular browser. So as part of this umbrella, so Excel Graph also has the Microsoft Graph also has Excel REST APIs. And using these APIs, you can read or modify content within Excel. So the functionality wise, it is not as wide, deep as the add-ins, but you can do a lot with it. Like for instance, you can access key objects like worksheets, range, table, named items. You can create tables and worksheets and charts. You can download chart as an image. And you can do access-rich table and range formatting and chart formatting. You can manipulate data. You can update, sort, and filter. You can call large worksheet functions, and also yeah, you can work with like range and worksheet protection, right? So you can still do a lot, but it is not as wide as Office add-ins in terms of the functionality. And that is because when you think of a mobile application, it is not likely going to be used for doing things like conditional formatting or custom XML access, right? Those type of scenarios don't apply for online mobile apps. It is mainly kind of targeted towards reading data, creating some custom content, maybe setting up Excel for some report generation, or maybe grabbing like doing some calculation, grabbing an Excel image, and maybe you want to display that on your website, or maybe just performing calculation. Imagine you have a mortgage calculator, and you type in your interest rate and the loan amount and perform calc, and Excel can give you the result back, and you can display that on your web page. So you don't have to replicate any logic you may have already built in your Excel on your web or mobile app. So it's very easy to extend that. So here's an example of what that resource looks like. Really, the key part I wanted to call out is all the leading text is all Microsoft Graph, but on any given SharePoint item or a OneDrive item, you can attach this workbook segment, and then you can access all the other object model within Excel. So that's how Excel REST works. And they have a really great documentation site. You can search for Microsoft Graph and land there. And one of the cool things they have is an explorer, an online interactive explorer. Here you can pick like which method you want, like get, put, post, and then you can put in your path of Excel. This is the URL, and then you can run query. They also have some out-of-the-box queries that you can directly access. And for most of these, you don't even need to sign in. You can just begin to interact with it immediately. So it's very interactive. It's super easy to get started out with. I don't have any samples, but I'm happy to follow up on either add-ins or REST on a follow-up meeting. So I'll stop here for a second and see, maybe I can go and look at some questions, or I'll let you just unmute yourself and ask questions. If not, I can get started with the next section too. I'm happy to read either.
Any questions?
Michael, did you see any questions come through? I didn't.
I saw a comment, someone saying saying the session is one that the way he said it in English, because we have a way of saying things here. So in English, it roughly translates to, wow, it's a loaded session. So it's great.
I'm sorry, like, I thought maybe it's better to start like a little bit higher up and then come down rather than just diving directly into a deeper topic. So I know it's packed, but again, it's for the rest of the session, it's going to be more focused, I promise.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So feel free to stop me at the next stop point, and I'll continue till then. So the next topic I want to talk about is Office scripts. So this is a way for end users to automate tasks in Excel for web. And so this is a team that I'm part of. So I've been, most of my day time goes into working on Office scripts. And earlier, this was going to be sort of the core focus and only topic. And the other two add-ins and REST APIs sort of things that Michael and I were chatting and added later on, just so you get sort of the full broader spectrum of all the web-based technologies that Excel offers, right, for extensibility. So our goal is to empower Office users to easily automate tasks and processes and run their business effectively anytime and anywhere. So this is sort of the mission that we are running with. And this is driving, all our product strategy and how we want to position and enhance the product. Right? So when we look at the programmability within Office, especially for Excel, we see the technology split in these sort of forums. Right? One is you have the sort of the desktop and more individual focused on the left side, and then the web and collab focused on the right side. And then the lower half of the quadrant talks to the pro dev, which is like people who are pro developers and using Excel to provide solutions for others. Whereas their top half refers to end user approachable, which is somebody without much of a knowledge can get started out with and start layering their learning experience. And we've had traditionally, so VBA solution meeting that criteria where you have an individual and sort of more desktop focused solution. And then COM-based for add-ins, and these are more heavily desktop oriented. Right? And these will continue to exist, and the object model keeps evolving. But where we are focusing right now, where we're investing right now for end user automation is in Office scripts. So because this is not only end user approachable, but at the same time, web and collab friendly. So the business challenges that I laid out at the very beginning kind of resonates with this because it's not only easy to automate, but also very easy to plug in with the rest of your business. So what is Office scripts? It's a new admin managed collaborative feature within Excel that enables you to automate your day-to-day tasks by recording your actions and converting them into scripts, and also customizing your actions into customizing that script to add your own business logic. And it offers both in-app, so you're sitting in Excel and you want to record just like a macro recorder. So it works in the in-app, but also in the offline or unattended mode, which means that you can run the same script, but you can do it in a manner that you can now run the same automation in using Power Automate. So it's available in public preview right now. So we are working on moving towards the GA phase. So what are the kind of the core differentiating features of Office scripts? So one, it is a journey that we are starting with Excel Online. So if you're looking for automation, if you're looking for recording and replays type of activities, so it works on Excel Online. So this is ideally suited for you. And then it integrates with Power Automate. So I imagine you may have heard or seen, or maybe even using Power Automate. So it is a way for end users to use a low code or no code approach to automate workflows. And one of the action that you will see later on that Excel offers is to run Office scripts. And then everything comes with admin controls, so they can enable, disable at various levels. And we have a very simple API model. So the API is written in, the language is TypeScript or JavaScript. And we have a very simplified API model to help users learn and grow. So I'll play the small video. It's 1 minute long, but it kind of gives you an idea of what, not sure that the audio will work. So I'll play this and you can kind of I'll explain along. So here I have some set of data and you can see that this is Excel Online. And there is an Automate tab at the top, and that's where all the functionalities are grouped. And so you can begin by recording your actions. It opens a task pane and it captures all the actions, and it even has a feature where it echoes all your actions back. And then you can stop recording and it will allow you to just immediately run. And you can also share the script with others. So it's more of like pinning this workbook script with the workbook. And you can now edit this and or you can also like, edit this and add your logic customizations on top of it. The inbuilt code editor doesn't require any configuration. You can drag to get more real estate, and you can begin to customize now. You can build on top of this, and now just kind of run it directly. So you don't need any other configuration. So it's just directly, you can both record, edit, and run all within the same experience. So that's just a very simple view, and I'll go into a little bit more during the demo. Next, I mentioned use with Power Automate. So Power Automate helps you create business flows, and you can use not just Excel, but other M365 apps. And the sample thing that I'm showing here, it is using Microsoft Forms. So the one cool thing about Power Automation is you can get your workflow started based on any trigger condition. It could be like once a day, or it could be like, hey, anytime my SharePoint file arrives in this folder, or anytime I get an email with this header. So those are all different conditions you can use. And as part of that, you can also now include Excel run script action. So that's where the same script can now run also as part of the Power Automation. So this is one of the powerful ways that customers are using Office scripts. And all of this comes with admin controls. So administrators can go to their settings and disable, enable Office scripts, or they can control minor features, things like sharing of Excel scripts, or to enable or disable running of the same scripts within Power Automate. So administrators have a better view of what type of automations are happening, so it's more friendly to them. I mentioned Office Scripts API. It is a simplified model of the API surface. So if you have never tried JavaScript APIs, it gives you sort of the same synchronous interaction pattern that VBA offers. So it's very easy to get started out with without needing to know like the promises and callbacks functionality that if you're developing an add-in, which is more advanced, you may have very specialized scenarios. Over there, you do need to know kind of some of the callback aspects of JavaScript. But here, we made it very simple so you can start your journey and begin to expand very easily. And we've also added some easy patterns to interact with range and tables. If you've used add-ins, you'll find this much more simpler to work with. And we've also optimized for certain performance optimized scenarios, where if you're doing a bunch of sequential writes, we do it all in a single round trip, so makes it much more performant. And so how are customers using? So we've been in preview for over a year now, and we see these 4 types of scenarios that customers are applying Office scripts in. One is the automation of for users who are on Excel for web. So they didn't, that was a big gap. We didn't really have any story before Office scripts for allowing automation in Excel in terms of macro recording support. So now with Office scripts, users are using the solution there. Second is to trigger workflows based on a condition, like file uploaded to SharePoint or a SharePoint list updated. That data gets fed into Office scripts and it does something with it, or it can even return data and that some other application uses that later. So that's sort of the typical workflow. And then you can integrate Excel with the other business apps. It could be Azure Functions, Teams, Power BI. Now, you were able to do some of this with VBA, but you had to figure out, let's say if you have to post a message to some Teams channel from VBA, right? So you had to figure out pretty much all of the libraries that it took and understand how those interactions worked. You had to deal with the REST APIs and all of that. So for an end user who's trying to learn, for a maker, that is a pretty steep learning curve. So with the Power Automation, now it's very easy to connect because you have a low-code drag and drop approach to pass data in and out of Excel and connect that to the rest of your business. And then finally, sort of data validation and data preparation, especially overnight. so that next time when your business users come into work, their data is already ready and they can get to work immediately, right? So that's another reason why customers are using this. And we look forward to adding more functionality here. Things like whenever Excel Online offers Power Query, you'll be able to refresh those in Excel Online as well. So those are some of the new functionality that we look forward to adding in the future. So I'll stop here. So this is my sort of second stop point before I go into the detailed demos. And I'll see if there are any questions.
Thanks a lot. So some questions have come. Okay, you're already pulling them up. I wanted to say maybe I should read them.
Yeah, I just started looking at them. So
I think the first
I'm
one,
sure.
the
Go
first
ahead.
was from Nicholas. So should I read it? It's a little beef. Okay, you've seen it, awesome. Okay, no, I think he asked one before. So he said, is add-ins meant when you were on that slide where you had this quadrant, where you had this thing that shows web adding on one side, VB on the other side, like individual slash. You remember that slide? So that was when you asked.
Oh, okay. Is it so? This is about yeah, it's a good question. When to use add-in, when to use Office scripts. So at the very beginning, when I was talking about add-ins, I showcased various different. Let me switch to that quickly. So these are all sort of the features that the add-in provides. So if your extension requires ribbon interaction, and if your extension requires some form of user interface where you need them to, I don't know, maybe select something on your UI and then interact with it. Could be a form, it could be some other means to interact with it. So if you have a UI or a ribbon interaction requirement, add-in is your way to go, right? The other one is sort of distribution is a big thing. So if you're providing solutions and distributing at scale using the store or through the admin configured deployment, add-in is your best bet. And then if you have other requirements like single sign-on, you need like a dialog offering to work with, or if you want to provide custom functions. So these are all features that the add-in provides. Now there is some overlap, right? So you could also provide maybe some, let's say you want to consolidate worksheet data into a single data and then provide some pivot table and charts and some summary report. You can very well do that with Office scripts as well. So, but the key aspect you need to look at is how a user is going to interact with this. Is it just like, hey, click of a button and that's all I'm looking for? Then Office scripts is a better solution. And also think about which users are going to be using it. How are they going to be using it? Do you want to create the solution and distribute to anybody, anywhere in the world? Then Office scripts is sort of more enterprise focused. So if you're part of that enterprise, you can come and provide solutions. Or you can also distribute solutions, but it'll be sort of one-off, right? You have to work with each individual enterprises to do that. Whereas with the add-in, you can create your solution, put it on the store, and then anybody can acquire it. So that's the distribution side of things. But yeah, there are overlaps because the same APIs that the add-in uses also gets used by Office scripts. So there are some overlap, but the distinguishing factor is the UI aspect, and then custom functions. How much security is there with these functionality? Yeah, so it is quite secure, mainly because the add-in that you see here is sandbox, which means the only part it can access. And then the same applies for Office scripts as well, is that it can only access through Office.js. So Office.js is a library that we provide, and it is highly curated in the sense that we only give access to certain application objects. but for the most part, the scope is limited to just the workbook. You cannot access another workbook. And some may see that as a limitation, but it's one of the key security aspects. So you have to give consent before you use an add-in. So users know that, okay, I know what I'm acquiring for. It lists all the permissions that the add-in uses, like whether it reads and writes. In the case of Office scripts, you can share scripts among colleagues, but when you run a script that is shared by somebody else, it'll warn you that, hey, you're about to run a script for the first time, that you're running a script that somebody else has shared with you. So it is sort of that, those sort of security models are built in. And as with any administrative control features, an administrator can immediately disable all add-in store access, or if he or she has assigned add-ins, they can remove that as well. And in the case of Office scripts, there are several layers. You can provide access and not at the upfront. You can also control finer things like, I don't want this user to share, or I don't want this same script to be run in Power Automate. So those are additional security controls built in. I think probably the most sort of popular feature among administrators is just the ease through which they can distribute. So they have the visibility that, hey, my enterprise is using these 5 different add-ins, and that's the visibility that's very hard to get using the VPA COM-based solutions. And the other key thing that I didn't mention about Office scripts is that maybe there's a slide later on that I'll touch on. Yeah, I have a slide here that touches on how they're linked to the workbook. So Office scripts are not tied to the workbook. It is stored separately in OneDrive for Business. So that means that you can create a script attached to, you can use across many other workbooks. So that's one way through which you can prevent the automation or logic to be distributed by just simply emailing the workbook, right? So your script doesn't travel with the workbook. All right. So I'll switch to the demo parts. I'll try to make up some time here. So I mentioned the recorder. As you're recording, we have a task pane. We call it the intent messages. And what this is doing is it's displaying what you're doing. And here, for instance, the user is trying out different font for the same range, and he's doing some undos and redos, and you can see that the message that we showcase also adjusts to the same. So you'll see that it's font 1, and then it's font 2, and then it redo and undo. So the benefit of this is that, one, you know what is happening, and secondly, when you look at the actual script, it matches with that single unified action. So here, the code snippet that you're seeing is the converted script from this, and it gets the sheet, and then on the range 1, A1, it gets the format and sets the name to Arial. So even though you did multiple things, but at the end result was that range and A1 got a font of Arial. So that's what the script shows. So there's sort of one-to-one correlation between the recorded messages and the script that you see. Next is more intelligence around how we detect data that's within Excel, especially the range and table interaction. So in this video, I'm going to start playing here. The user is trying to highlight a few rows within this table and setting some font color. And the next, the user is going to select the product column and will set a background color, right? So now, if you can see on the right side, it is able to recognize that, hey, you actually operated on 8 rows on table 3. So you set a font color, and then you set the background color on a sub-range of Excel column, right? So it is able to understand that you're working not just on any range, but on a given real estate within a table. Now, where this is helpful is when I want to now enhance this, right? So I'll go to the next slide, and I'll show how we can now easily expand on it. So let's suppose instead of highlighting just 8 rows, I want to do 16 rows. and instead of just highlighting the product column, let's say I want to do ratings too. So I can do that easily. Now in this, I basically open the same script that was recorded in the previous slide, and I'm going to play this video that shows how simple it is to make that change. Now I changed the number of rows to traverse from 16 to from 8 to 16. And then in addition, let's say I want to set it to bold. Now I can just use the set bold API to set it to true. And then I scroll down a little bit, and then I select the whole chunk of code that did the formatting for product column. And I repeat that and then change the product to rating. So this is get column by name. So it'll easily get that and set that rating to set the same format to rating to. So you can see that it's pretty easy by linking the changes that you're doing to the table. It makes it much more easier to traverse and recognize which parts of the table you're working on and extend. So next demo is going to talk about the range end API. So this is something that we didn't have like a few days ago, and users who tried said, hey, I want to be able to use control arrow key and select and highlight. Pretty popular in VBA. So we recently added this. It's not out yet. I think it'll probably take 1 or 2 weeks for it to flow. So this demo shows how we can use that API. So here I have some sales data and I have sales column. Let's say I want to just add a sum of all the sales and highlight that in a formula. And what if you didn't know how big this table is going to be on a given day, right? So you may want to account for any number of transactions on a given day. So using the range end API, you can now do that quite easily. So the first is on line number 8, I'm going to get a range reference to E2, which is sales. And then I'll use the get extended range API by passing an enum saying it's down arrow key. And then I'll simply use the format, get the fill and set the color to tan. Right, so that accomplished that. Then I'm going to uncomment the other code just to show this easily here. Then on the same sales column, I'm going to get the range edge, which is, hey, from here, from E2, jump to E14, and then go down a cell, which is using the another API, and then set the formula and then set the background color. Right? So now I have the background color and the formula. And then you can also go not just top down, but also across. So the last bit of uncommenting API that I did highlighted, maybe one of the rows for you, right? So using these kind of APIs, you can record and in an intelligent fashion, edit this so that now you can run the same script on any worksheet. So that way you don't have to worry about, hey, did I hard code anything? So as you can see, other than picking the sales column, so there was no like real hard coding to set the formula. Right. And then my final demo is to walk through like a full scenario end to end. Again, in the interest of time, I've recorded this. I'm going to walk through, and I'm happy to share the whole entire source code on the file. I'll be uploading this to our product page sometime in the next week. So here's a scenario. It's very simple, and it contains some product and sales information. And the goal is, let's say I need to validate this data and highlights any issues that I may have that my colleague needs to be aware of. And let's say I'm doing this manually on a day-to-day basis. Some of the inconsistency I see here is that, hey, there's a customer ID missing. So I need to alert somebody, a colleague of mine saying, hey, there's a customer ID missing. Can you go take care of this? A cool way to do this, if you haven't used, is to use the modern Excel comments, where you can, and it's available in Excel Online. You can add a comment and mention somebody. When you mention someone, they get an email with the link to the workbook, and they can directly go and address it. So I like to use that feature. And I'll also use some Excel formatting to highlight the cell so that they'll know where to go, and they'll be able to go and fix issues and and do the rest of the processing. So to do that, I don't know how to do, let's say, any of the APIs or coding. So I'm going to begin my journey by recording. Right. So first, I'm going to record this. I'll start with maybe one other cell, and I know this is not going to be dynamic. This is going to be static, but I can make that more dynamic later. First, I just want to get the APIs that I can use as a baseline version. So I'll open the recorder and I'll set the color to the desired background color, and I will go to the review tab and add a comment, and I'll mention Adele, who's my colleague, and say, hey, please fix this issue here. There's no customer ID, and I'm gonna assign a comment now. And then let's say I want to create some visualization on top. So on the same table, I'm gonna now go insert a pivot table, and I will pick the category and the subcategory as the rows, and then I'll pick the sum of quantity as my value, and I have a pivot table that I can share now. Next, I'm going to go insert a pivot chart, and then I'll just position this. So with this, I have pretty much completed all the functionality I need. The only thing I need to now worry about is, hey, I don't want to just do it on one cell where the customer ID is missing, but do it on all the cells, right? So let's look at how to do that in the next slide. Right? So now I can stop recording and go directly into the code editor and start making changes. Right? So go to the last slide here. So you can begin your journey with automation by simply recording it. So next, let's look at how to customize it. So if you're using Excel Online, if you have an Enterprise 3 account and above, you can access this feature today. It's available. So if you have a consumer account or E1 account, we don't have Office scripts on those type of licensing. And once you start using it, if you have any feedback, you can give us the feedback directly within the editor. So you can go to this, the 3 dots that you see, the overflow menu. And then, let's see. Oops, maybe that didn't show up. I'll show that towards the end. Okay, so let's come back to the demo. So here, now what I want to do is, I've reset the Excel data. Now what I want to do is, instead of just highlighting and adding comment, but I want to do it for all. So to do that, and I've added a simple loop here on line number 13. All it's doing is taking all the customer IDs and getting its text. So customer ID, I can get that by get column by name API and getting its text. I'm going to iterate through each of the row here, and as you'll see that the rest of the code is not modified. It's just that I've added that loop and added that formatting and adding comment inside that loop. Now, this B4 is hard-coded. So instead of that, I'm going to say, hey, since I'm already in the loop, I'm going to use a get cell API on those 2-dimensional text object arrays. And then I'll simply say, hey, give me the current iteration, which is I. 0 is just saying the only column that I have there. So with that, I made it more dynamic now. So when I run it, I give an error. It's because on line number 9, I'd made a mistake. So it's very easy to identify errors and fix it. So when I run, it found 2 empty cells, and it added a comment. And you'll see that it also added a new sheet with the pivot chart. So now I have all the information that I need in terms of automation to run this elsewhere. And I have one last thing to show on how to use the same script now in the unattended mode, right? So unattended mode is the Power Automation. Now, I don't want to do this every day. I want to set this up so that anytime a file arrives, or maybe once a day, I want to do this. Yeah, sorry, this is a send feedback I wanted to show. You So from the editor, you can send feedback directly and include your screenshot. We review this within the team and we look at that. All right, so let's see how to do this automation in Power Automate. So I take the same script, and this is already this is how Power Automation looks like. And I have set up a recurrence logic, says, hey, run this once a day. And this is a run script action. On the same file, on sales data Excel file, I can run the script 9, which is the name of my script. And at the end, I'm going to send an email to my colleague and include the chart image and also a link to the workbook. So I can create the workbook using the create share link action. So when I run this, it is going to run each of the flows sequentially. And at the end, it'll email my colleague. So my colleague gets an email. This is how the email is going to look like. It has a link. It has a chart image. All of this was generated within Power Automate. And then the chart link was generated by Office Scripts. And when I switch back, I can see that it's actually done the same thing, but running through Power Automate now. So you can now see, you can start your journey by automation by recording, and then you can customize your logic. You can run it within the app, but you can also run this same thing in Power Automate. So those are all set of demos that I wanted to showcase. So I'll stop here and do like a time check. Maybe I'm slightly, yeah, I think I still have 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll pause here for a second to take any questions. And I only have one other slide to go over. Okay, so this is a question. I have a large Excel sheet that I populate and maintain end of month. I want people within my organization to be able to query this Excel sheet using a unique key in the data when they need info from the sheet. Like just get the data they want from the Excel sheet without asking me to send the whole sheet to them and without them downloading the whole sheet. It could be just sending an email to the email address. Yeah, so this is perfectly suitable for Office Scripts and Power Automation. What you can do is give them a form, and at the very beginning I showed a screenshot, right? So that does exactly the same thing. Let's see, here. So it's kind of hard to see, but here there is a form. And anytime a user submits a form, it kicks off a workflow, and at the end, it results in sending an email. That apply each is a condition. You could say, hey, the data that you wanted is here. This is the information. Or if you don't find it, you can also say your data is not found, and send them another email to refill the data, refill the form. So yeah, that's perfectly doable. Ideally suited for Power Automation and Office Scripts. Okay. Yeah, is there a help for Office Script? Yeah, so all the available APIs, you can actually see that right from within the IntelliSense. So if you're on Excel, you can, let's say here, I'm actually switching to my Excel sheet. Same data I was looking at. There are two ways to find APIs available. One is the core IntelliSense. That is, you can get code completion and explore what are all the different APIs. So let's say I want to know, hey, what does workbook have to offer? So I can do a dot, and it does all the code completion. So this is one way. The second way is if you just search Office Scripts, you land on the web page. It should be the first link, and there is a reference section. You see this API reference. So you can click on this Excel script, and you can find everything you need. So you can also filter by, let's say, looking for table, maybe pivot table. So you can see all the APIs that we offer. And then the other cool thing we added just yesterday is a lot of samples. So we have sort of basic samples, sort of beyond basics. We've listed tons of new samples that you can use, and a lot of them you may see. In addition to the source code, like we'll also have some screenshots, as well as towards the end, there's also like a full screen video of step-by-step instructions. So these tend to be long form videos, 30, 40 minutes, but they'll walk you through every step that you need, right from the scratch. And it also includes the input files that you need. So we can start from just having the Excel application and follow these steps to create like an end-to-end app. All right. And yeah, so if you have any questions on any of this, please feel free to reach me on any of the channels. And then I'll be able to, provide either the sample or, point you in the right direction. So I think, Michael, I've covered the core part of the agenda that I wanted to cover. I will leave on this.
One more slide. I thought you mentioned one more slide, right?
Yeah, I have one more slide. So there's one thing about differences between Office scripts and VBA macro. I'll let you read this offline. I've given the link to this. But the last thing I wanted to leave was we have a program where we invite our communities to help shape the future of our product. And basically what it is basically a work group that you can join. And I've given links to this here. And if you join, it basically adds you to a distribution list through which we shared some updates. And periodically, when we do surveys, we reach out and say, hey, would you be willing to spend half an hour with us? You can directly talk to us. And that way we can kind of collect your feedback and your inputs directly into the product. So I'll leave this link here. If you're interested, please join this, and it'll help us reach out and seek feedback. Yeah, I think with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I'm happy to stay back if you have any questions. But once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the wonderful session. And I was already trying to put the links in the chat box, so they are almost done. I'm putting the one for the beginner. So I'm going to join all of them.
Awesome.
I've put them there. So anybody has a question at this stage, you can unmute and ask directly. So no more fear of you taking so much time and we are struggling to catch. So at this point, people can, if you have any questions, you can ask directly. And I don't know if it's fair to say this, but then no harm in saying this. Even if the question you have is something that only a Microsoft staff can answer you, even if it's outside of what is being shared. I know Sudhi works in the Office team and knows a lot about the old Excel more than any one of us. So feel free to ask. I'm sure he might be able to give you a better answer than any other person we've ever had in the sessions. So anybody, maybe I'll call out some people. Okay. So I'm just trying to fish out some people who I know. And,
so maybe a question, has anyone tried to use Office scripts or add-ins? Have you had any experience, issues, challenges? Even if it's not a question, it could be interesting for us to know. If you've tried to use or unable to access or unable to use for some reason. So that's also an interesting feedback for us to carry forward.
Okay. Well, I have, because I was in one other session you had last year. I think it was maybe London Excel users. So while I was in the session, I was when I learned about the office script and I tried it.
No, but this one, okay.
Someone is not knowing that is but any other person, anybody tried? Do you want to share your own experience? So for me, I just tried what we showed that day, and it worked fine. Everything I tried from what you shared worked fine. And I think
Right.
someone else too did. Um, what's his name? Paul Kelly too did a session.
Yes.
Yeah. So I also tried what I didn't try everything he did, but I think I tried a little. And
yeah. Paul's video is quite popular on YouTube. It has, I think, thousands of views, more than anything our own team has put up. So he's doing an amazing job broadcasting. And if you have some scenario in mind and maybe need like a starter sample to get started with, like the one that was just described here a moment ago, feel free to let us know. We are always looking for new scenario and samples to work with. So we can use your scenario and kind of provide a generic version of that. So you'll get a base version to work with.
Oh, that's great. So the window of opportunity for you to ask any question is about to be closed. Are you sure you don't want to take advantage of this? I'm going to call some people. There's someone who I'm seeing him for the first time in this our session. Mr. Fidel, it's a pleasure that you joined. Mr. Godson, I think you've joined someone. Both of you, I want you to say something. I'm sure, especially Mr. Fidel, I'm sure you must have gotten an idea that you want to implement within your organization, or something that you might just want to get an opinion about, if it will work the way you think it will work. Oga Fidel, we are waiting for your Mr. Godson. What about you? Any ideas coming to your mind?
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, thank you for the session. I'm actually feeling somehow because I joined a bit late, and I would have loved to follow everything from the beginning, but with the hope that maybe at the end of this meeting, I will.
At the end of okay, I see. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mike.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bella. Yeah. Aha.
Yeah.
I was talking to you, but good you talked before I got to you.
Good evening, Mr. Sudhi. Thanks for the wonderful session.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sudhi.
Hi.
Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you.
My concern is that in my organization, we are trying to do a process workflow. We want to digitalize our process. Is there a way that this office script will be of help to the organization? I mean, for the group company, not for just an organization, where everything will be digitalized and our processes and procedures will be just a flow instead of people, doing manual things. I don't know how this could be. Then how secure is the workflow? When we compare workflow of SAP or Sage, in Sage or SAP, workflow moves from one person to another and they are well secured. So I don't know how secure this office script and adds-in is.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the security framework that Office Scripts offers. Again, it's all controlled by administrators. Administrators get all the visibility. In terms of Power Automation, so one thing to remember about Power Automation is that it is user-centric. So which means you don't need any server-side setup or an administrator to get involved. Once a user gets access to a certain, gets the access to set up the flows, everything else is now controlled by that user's permission. So let's say I'm going to start with one of this. I don't know which one this is, but let's say I start this. It contains few connectors. So it has Teams, and I don't even recognize which one this is. So when I do this, you will see that this flow will connect to Teams using this user ID. This is a test account that I'm using. So all the additional things that it does is controlled by that user permission. So if I have set up a flow and use a script that goes and accesses a workbook that I don't have permission to, it'll say, sorry, no, you do not have access to access that. So you will see in any given workflow, it has the owners, as well as you can share this. And whenever you share it with others, it'll run under their permission view, right? So it's quite sort of secure in that sense. So everything is mapped back to a given user permission scope. And even things like if I send an email using the workflow, it still uses my account permission as a way to trigger those actions.
Thank you. Sorry, another question. Must we have O365 before you can make use of this application?
If you do, so it requires the Office 365, and even then the Enterprise 3 plus, so you need to have E3 or I think E5. It's not available on E1 and consumer. So that is sort of our starting point, the E3 and E5. We'd love to hear if you have a scenario that requires a consumer account or an E1 where you would like to make use of that opportunity. That's a good feedback for us to take forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Biolami, I think most likely your company is on E3 and above. I think E1 has a limit number, right? Sudhi, is that true? For a company that has a user size above, say 100, I don't think E1 works for them, right?
I think E1, more than the size, I believe it has to do with if you need like the desktop apps, not just the online. That's where I believe the E1 to E3 boundary is. And there are some special apps like, like things like forms may not work on E1. So there are a few like apps based, and also especially for Excel, Word, PowerPoint, I think it's a desktop account, desktop application. If you need that, you need an E3 account.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Bella, if you need to confirm, I can always help you behind the scene to find out which one you use. Okay. So
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. All right. Because of time, I think we just need to move to the last bit. Why I wasn't trying to keep so much of the time anymore is because Sudhi already told us that he's willing to spend as much time with us as we are willing to also spend with him today. So there are two questions we normally ask every guest we'll be privileged to have, and I'm even very, very eager to get your own answer, which are question number one, your journey. So how did you, looks like your battery is running out.
Yeah, I think I have probably run through another 5 minutes. Keep speaking. Okay. Attach my power adapter. Go on.
Okay, I'll hold on then.
All right. Okay, I'm back.
Great. So maybe I'll ask the two questions so you can answer them, without me having to break your conversation, your explanation. So question number one is, we would like to hear your journey, your journey. For you, I know it will be kind of different for most of us who maybe work on the consuming side, but I know definitely too, your journey will be one that some of us will really, really see some insight from. And, I don't even know, maybe before you moved into your role in Microsoft, we would also like to hear how all that built up to that. So number one is your journey. We'd like to hear about your journey into this space, why Microsoft, why Office, why Excel, and then the second one is your advice for people starting out right now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for the question. So my background was in more as a healthcare. So I was a programmer for healthcare applications. So that's how I started. And then I moved into consulting space, so strategy consulting. So that's where I would go to the customer side and work on a brief problem, suggest ways in which they can approach it. These projects tended to be like 3 to 6 months long. And I enjoyed it for a while, the fact that I could visit different sites, visit different customers, but then it wasn't really hands-on. So strategy consulting is mainly analyzing and suggesting solutions. So I felt like I'm moving further away from the products that I like to work with. So I switched back to industry again. And I worked in telecom for a brief period where I was working for like storage solutions. And that's where I got introduced to a developer platform, a developer ecosystem related work. And I really fell in love with that because it has sort of best of both worlds, I feel. One, you get to work on the product, but then you work directly with your customers, and our customers are developers. And because developers are, you're not connected to them, you're connected to them directly. There are no layers in between. If you ship a product and end users use it, you don't ever get to see them or interact with them, right? So there is administrators and decision makers, and there are 3-4 layers separated. Whereas with the developers, it's so open. Things like Stack Overflow, GitHub, Twitter makes it so easy to connect and work with. So you can test out your ideas easily. You can see how products are being used. And so that level of interaction made me kind of really say, okay, this is the place where I want to make my career in, kind of specialize in this area. And Microsoft has a very thriving ecosystem. They had Windows traditionally, and Office is huge in terms of developers. So I didn't really choose Excel. Like there was a Office platform job prospect, and I just happened to apply. My skills really suited well because I'd started working on the developer platform and API design. So those were my two main key skill set that I brought to Office. And I just landed in Excel team, and since then I've been with the same group. It's a very diverse set of people. We have people from ILD or like Israel, India, China here. So it's kind of an amazing team to work with. So I've been here the whole time. So in terms of advice, I would probably say pick 1 or 2 core expertise skills that you want to grow in. And what I mean is, could be technical, it could be product based, it could be product design or user experience or whatever that you are interested in. I mean, not just passionate about, also think about what's relevant for the industry. For instance, I may just want to do, something that's not relevant for the current industry or the current landscape. So I think you have to find both what you will excel at, but also what there is a market demand for in terms of jobs and customer demand. So if you have that, investing time, even if you're not directly working on that on your day-to-day job, setting aside some time every day, every week, have some goals to kind of become an expert in one area. I think that is a key. And that's what I feel companies look for, which is sort of unique background and skill set you can bring. And, I tried my hand at being a generalist, and as a consultant, I didn't really like it. Maybe it'll suit for others. So based on your personality, you should also pick something that'll suit your personality. So I think once you have that sort of building block, good things will happen. Whether it's school that you may want to study at or a company you want to go work for, seeing that fit and building that skill set will really help a long way. So the key thing is to not stop learning. You have to set aside some time. and otherwise you kind of get dragged down. It might become boring, or you may become too focused. You still have to kind of step up a level and then continue to learn in your core focus areas. So that's what I would say is sort of what has helped me personally.
Wow, thanks a lot. So I'm typing what you said, summarizing it and typing in the chat box. It seems someone has asked the question, so maybe, I don't know if you are able to, we'll just wrap up with that one.
Yeah, question is, can I use this app for database or hospital statistics, as we know that hospital statistics is on a different level of table? So I understood the first part. You can certainly use the app. When I say app, I guess you mean Excel. So Excel as a data source is a very common scenario that users use. The one thing to keep in mind is, how much data you have. Are you thinking in terms of millions of rows, or hundreds of thousands of rows, or just hundreds of rows? I think that how much of data you're operating on will make a big difference. I wouldn't recommend using Excel if you have huge throughput and input-output requirements, because Excel is more of a calculation engine. It can operate on large amount of data, but it's not meant for sort of transactional database type of application. So based on the size, Excel is super convenient. So depending on the data, I would use Excel if it's not too big. Yeah.
So thanks a lot. And for everybody who has joined, it's a pleasure to again have you, and also to our special guest. It's always a pleasure to be in your session. I think this is probably the third of your session I'm in. Can't remember very well. And I really like the fact that you're always very willing to share the new goodies that are there in Excel and Office scripts particularly. And thank you very, very much. I hope that in the future we'll again benefit from your presence and you sharing with us what's amazing and new, and hopefully then too we'll be able to show you some things we've done with what you've taught us today. So thanks a lot, and to everybody, happy Easter. And I think at this juncture we will close the session. So Sudhi, thanks for the amazing session. Have a nice week ahead. To everybody, bye. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Steve. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Michael.
Bye.